Hello, I will roll for the page number and spot, and whatever I get, I must use. The goal being to build on a world with these character designs. However, I want to set some rules. The designs must be functional over fashion, existing in my low magic fantasy world with its own magic system. You will not see a flashy design unless it makes sense in the context of the world. All while they must incorporate the colors, shape, name of the plant, and even incorporate some biological fact. Finally, it must represent a group of people within the world, like how there are a group of plants in the real world. But before we start, let me talk about what we're rolling off of. I originally came to this idea when I picked up this book from the flea market. Flipping through the book, I thought, nature has some of the coolest shapes and colors to draw inspiration from. But is that always true? I mean, grass exists. And I guess, I am feeling like a flower boy today, so we will be using this book. Rickey, Sedum Matrona, and Weldenia Candida. There are nice, distinct shapes and color combinations here, from the Sedum Matrona's deep burgundy stem to the flowers that almost remind you of tiny crystals, to Weldenia's beautifully round petals contrasted with its sharp leaves and stamen, except for Rickey. So let's start with that. Anyways, here are the designs. Wait, hold on, I can explain this. Rickey, a type of Heuchera, known as coral bells. Flowers that are tiny, an overfamiliar green, and a leaf shape that isn't unique in the slightest. I mean, look at it. It looks like a salad on a burger. Let's even take a step back and look at the other type of these plants. Every other leaf is just so cool, but this? The name doesn't even give me a place to start with. Heuchera being named after some sort of botanist, and Rickey being some sort of alcoholic drink. There wasn't a strong identity that I could pull out of it. I couldn't figure out a job of what the Heuchera represented. Maybe a group of nobles with each house represented by a Heuchera breed? But it felt too easy. In order to incorporate the name of the plant, I kept going back to coral bells. So I scrolled and scrolled. Maybe a group of religious worshippers, each with their own sect, represented by the diverse Heuchera colors. Maybe a sea god paying homage to the word coral in coral bells. But no, I just didn't like it. Even though noble or religious clothing are functional for symbolic or ritualistic purposes, there wasn't the amount of practical functionality that I really wanted to destroy myself with. It wasn't in the spirit of the restrictions. I began to pore over the history of bells, town bells, religion, surely something more. 23 results down, something piqued my interest. Every bell so far has been a large bell casted on top of a church, but a handbell? To signal and attract attention, handbells have served street vendors, town criers, and night watchmen in the West. The town crier. Those whose job was it to yell the news in town for all the people who couldn't read. With just some quick research into the town crier, I found this. Proclaiming the news was not, however, their only role. Indeed, their original role was to patrol the streets after dark, acting as peacekeepers, arresting miscreants, and taking them to the stocks for punishment, and posting their crimes to show why they were there. But wait, remember this. The idea of patrolling the night after dark was similar with the fact that these plants are fully tolerant in the shade. Thematically, it just made sense. This was pretty much the night watch mentioned earlier, but the fact that this was such a multifaceted job made me imagine a group night watch / town criers worthy of adorning a unique set of vibrant green and silver gear that set them apart, meaning that I needed more. I needed an antagonist. I looked back. Surely the night watch dealt with plenty of bandits, criminals, and even murderers. But looking at the history of the world you live in, there were a lot of examples of the night watch back then who were ill-prepared. Watchmen on the road leading to London had a reputation for clumsiness in the late 1580s. It was a temptation on cold winter nights to slip away early from watching stations to catch some sleep. It seemed like history did not serve much of an answer for who our antagonist is, but for the night watch of my world to be the opposite of history, the threat needed to be strong. It wasn't until I came back to this page where I stumbled across the answer: deer. You see, deer are crepuscular, meaning that they are most active at twilight, in the early mornings or early evenings, before sunrise and after sunset. The ancient Cervidian people of the forest spoke tale of being able to communicate with animals, spearheading them to prosper in the initial chaotic times. Their work with animals leading to a wide anatomy mastery, allowing them to heal. This magic eventually turning into grafting magic. They viewed the act of grafting as sacrificing one's own body to allow the body of the sacred animal another chance at life. With the anti-magic Heuchera kingdom expanding, the early Cervidian people were cut down for their use of magic and their companions for food. Their numbers slashed, their people splitting into many different groups with each their own specific worship animal. The now Cervidian people would regale past stories of their ancient people, filling themselves with anger, hatred, and yet fear. Fear for their survival, losing their homes, hungry and hunted, they wander the forests like deer. And so, in the depths of the night and in the early morning times, a soft and muddled clutter of hooves can be heard on the wall tops of the city. But for a moment, a hooded figure with 4 legs, the dim light of the moon reflected off of a single eye, trotting somehow quietly through the town, carrying an empty sack and yet not stealing anything until they see what they are seeking. A figure carrying a large bell and a halberd patrolling the street. It is a brief moment as the muffled trotting becomes a thundering gallop, the shield raised just in time as the hammer punctures through the shield, bending the helmet. The night watch trembling on the floor, reeling from the blow, as the looming figure stands right in front of her. A lantern briefly revealing the figure. But it runs. Anyway, so there's a reason why this all happens, and I promise it's huge. So let me start with. I won't get into too much detail for obvious reasons, but essentially, magic works by inscribing runes on an object. After that, tracing over the runes in a very particular speed creates a vibration that activates it, with each body part or object potentially reacting differently to the effect of the rune. Because of how specific this process is, everyone is able to learn, but it would take years to master a single spell, with a fraction of people who do end up learning magic usually end up only knowing one ability. And even after knowing the spell, it may take up to days to engrave the runes and minutes to hours to trace the magic. Also, there's almost zero permanent magic. This is all just the basic foundation, with the deer people specifically practicing grafting. Etched on skin is an ability that allows individuals to graft animal parts onto their body, and gaining the abilities that those animal parts would normally have regardless of their size or shape. This means that if a human were to graft wings of a bird onto their back, they would gain the ability to fly. even though in reality wings wouldn't be able to support the weight of a human, the grafting part growing or reducing in size to fit to the human. So as a result, a deer can jump 2 to 4 times its height, so a person with deer legs can do the same. The Ceridian people's name referencing the fact that they are specialized to engrave runes specifically on deer. Even if you know how to use the spell, it isn't so simple as engraving it on other animal parts. It may seem obvious to graft a beetle's body part to acquire its magnitude of strength, but different sizes and objects completely changes the way the runes are placed and traced, almost making it like learning a completely new ability. Abnormally small or large animals being much more challenging. Now that we got the basics all down, let's begin. Wait, no, I can explain. You see, they're actually grafted on. I was just trying to see what a centaur with human legs would look like. Yeah, I wanted it to look unique, and I guess it makes sense why centaur design hasn't changed over time. Or has it? Hold on. Hear me out. But what if you give it 4 legs? Okay, back to the video. In case you are wondering what the difference between horse and deer legs are, deer legs are thinner, having clothed hooves help them traverse rougher terrain. Which brings me to the question. What abilities are passed on to the Ceridian people as the deer are grafted onto them? Its agility is unmatched. The ability to go from a standstill to their top speed and to be able to change direction seamlessly. Absolutely powerful when weaving in and out of city alleyways. And the jumping ability. We have mentioned how high deer can jump, but keep in mind that this is only the average deer, and a human user would furthermore train to consistently reach the max potential. A trained deerman passing the average 2.5 times deer jumping height to be around 4 times jumping height. Being 6 to 7 feet tall, they can easily clear up 30 feet walls. Not high enough for any highly protected castle, but for any normal city will be perfect for these bandits. Now I would need to create the armor, outfit, and weapon for the Heuchera while considering the shape and color design of the flower, while making the design functional enough to deal with the fact that their major antagonist is a deer person that can jump over 30 feet in the air and can run at double the speed of any normal person. When thinking about the armor and weapon of both of these people, it is a must to see them side by side, as their gear evolved while fighting through the many decades. From the original deadly spear charges of the grafted deermen responded with the eventual plate armor that would deflect the spear blows. The Ceridian people changing into 2-handed bludgeoning weapons to knock out the Night Watch. Battles between these two were short and lethal. As for the Heuchera's counter, for a Night Watch that must deal with various threats, a one-size-fits-all solution: anti-magic. Inscribed onto the bell, anti-magic is the only magical ability researched well enough, the runes written so efficiently that the vibration from ringing the bell is similar to tracing runes and casting the spell normally. Its ringing vibration shuts off all magic in a limited range. Anti-magic was not just their protective measure. They sported an ornamental plate cuirass made of bronze, purposely rusted for the green look, similar to that of the Heuchera Lime Rickey's leave. The ornamental rusted look was a unique piece of armor that made the commoner knew that these guys were official, but also served enough defense against any sort of regular thief or bandit. But in contrast, you can see the helmet that they are holding, of the strongest metal, perfectly round to cause the enemy's weapon to glance off, practical and useful. They only needed to survive long enough to ring the bell. On the other hand, you can see their hammer divided into 4 prongs to better grip and puncture smooth surfaces. Its design inspired by the Lucerne hammer of your world. However, there was a distinct difference. The size was dramatically increased up to 25 pounds. Their swings were all-end, large and wide to the point where they wrapped all their joints to avoid stress injury. Combining the charging force of a deer up to 35 miles per hour with the ability to twist their body and create torque during a weapon swing, they could deliver a much deadlier strike than a man on a horse. Any strike like this would easily pierce and concuss through the strongest metal helmets. Thus, the Heuchera opted in for shield lanterns, inspired by the Italian shield lantern of your world. The bullseye lantern's shutter enabled stealth, unlike a typical lantern that could easily reveal their position, attached onto a shield would free a hand. This was how important stealth was for these two, as whoever reacted first would be the winner. This is even furthermore shown in their shoes. Both of them opting in for soft-soled footwear, the deermen using wider shoes, a larger surface area, distributing the wearer's weight more evenly across the ground. Therefore, less noise. Cloven hooves were less useful in the flat ground cities. Their black cloaks help them keep hidden in the night. In contrast, the Night Watch must be a crime-deterring authority figure in the night. Their clothing stands out much more than just maximizing stealth. They will still choose to wear brighter colors, but their choices were still optimized to reduce noise. They do not wear full plate to keep the noise down and to make patrolling less tiring. And thus, this is where you begin to see the difference in power between these two, the Cervidian people using this to their advantage. Grafted as well as one deer eye. A deer's eye has an extra reflective surface. Only a little bit of light is needed for their eyes to glow. Inside, the light bouncing back and forth, giving them superior night vision. Everything seems a lot more blue, losing the depth of color and the clear fidelity of human eyes for an almost piercing night vision, making these guys one of the most feared bandit groups that raided the lands. However, this was not all without drawbacks. The skin reddened around their ribs, the imprint of using magic over time causing this unnatural jutting of bones where antlers would normally used to be. Yet they wear it with pride, refusing to cover the area. Their human stamina changed to a deer's, making it so they couldn't travel far like before. The heavy weight made it so their footprints became deeper. Any sort of concerted effort by a group could easily track and take them down. With almost no permanent magic existing in this world, they had to be awake at certain intervals to retrace over their runes, as without the spell active, they would begin to internally bleed. That is why the anti-magic spell is so strong. From the feeling of running on wind to the sudden paralyzing sensation from the waist down, their lower half, a bag of meat sewn onto their bodies, that is what it felt like to be struck by anti-magic. The Heuchera did not worry too much about their offensive weapon. A common bill hook would help them against any normal bandit. A long staff with the metal at the end, reminiscent of the long stem in the coral bell plant. You might see bolas hung from the top of the billow as they get ready to place their weapons away for the day. Bolas being used for non-lethal range capturing of any sort of running bandit. Usually they would tie up the bolas hanging from their belt, but bolas weren't the only thing drawing reference to the shape of the coral bell. Their hair is tied to tassel shapes. They would use rope attached with tassels instead of leather, and so this was also the similar look for their town crier morning outfits. Using a custom crafted staff of bells, creating an almost ethereal, unique sound. The long staff, similar to the long stem of the coral bell flower. The amount of respect behind this job represented by how much was invested into their unique bells. You see, a town crier's outfit was meant to be extravagant, to grab attention. In the history of your world, the most striking thing about any town crier is their outfit, also known as livery or regalia. It is never referred to as a costume in town crier circles, and some frown on the word uniform, as no two outfits are exactly alike. An assault on a town crier carrying out their duties was at one time considered as treasonous as an attack on the persons whose authority they represented. It was therefore important that the garb of the town crier reflect that authority in some impressive fashion. This is similar in my world, the different cities sporting a different set of colors on their town crier. However, besides the grand look, there is a group of people who had a particular smell that seemed to be tradition between these guys. A smell of a particular alcoholic beverage. As for them, when they began the job of announcing the news in the morning, was also the time when they would have a drink before winding down to sleep. Their drink of choice called Rickey. You know, when I looked at this leaf brick, I did not expect to end up with 3 designs. And I spent so much time on the research, especially the deer research. I know there's gonna be some expert deer hunter who's shaking their head at my deer knowledge. Don't criticize me, I swear I tried my best, gosh darn, I can't even. This is a fictional world, you're not allowed. Weldenia Candida, a distinct look. It has a variety of shapes, from the cutting, protruding leaves that surround the protecting soft, round petals that almost shield the sharp yet delicate pollen part of the flower. It has color variety, unlike the last one. The shape alone already gave me ideas. Visions of 3 knights with their great round shields, golden spears, long dark green cloaks, and white armor. But that's not really enough. I needed more to know what this flower is really about. So I started with the name. Weldenia sounded unique. Surely it meant something really cool. But it wasn't until scrolling down countless of articles I found Alpine Garden Society from July 2006. Apparently, it doesn't even have a meaning. It's named by some dude. At least on the Wikipedia page, it says Canada, meaning shining white. Now I knew that something will glow about this character. I guess we can mark that on the checklist. But at the same time, the color white doesn't really give me a place to start with. The design is already going to have white, because the damn flower is white. The rest of the many articles talking about its growing conditions, growing in mountainous areas and can survive in pretty cold weather. But still, I am lost. But it wasn't until my mouse stumbled upon the word monotypic. Look, I'm not going to lie to you, I had no idea what this word meant.
Why do you have a book on flowers and plants?
I bought it because I thought the flowers were pretty. This word here piqued my interest. Apparently, you have this pyramid that these people who are called taxonomists, they define groups of living things together, and genus being pretty up there on the pyramid. For example, the Rosa genus, containing over 140 to 180 species. But here we have our single flower all alone, isolated. Weldenia, a group of people living on the tops of the snowy mountain. Isolated and alone, a peaceful life of hunting and gathering. Far away from the ever so expanding Heuchera kingdom, whose anti-magic stance weeding out those that would use such chaotic powers. Now, we developed the anti-magic kingdom in the last part, but I thought right here was a perfect chance to build on this idea. The further you get away from the kingdom that has planted its roots at the center of the continent means the more magic that the people were going to have, just because people would have a longer time to develop their techniques without being hunted. Or more magic meant more dangers. The people live scattered, their lives more chaotic. So what this all means is, with the distance and isolation, the Weldenia people should have more than just one ability. For the abilities that would make sense here, something needs to shine. The fact that they live in the mountain means that there also has to be a way for them to get up and down efficiently. Maybe some sort of flying. If something is flying, then it makes sense that there's some sort of manipulation of weight. Something that allows the person to bring stuff up and down. This is where the basis of what the design is going to be functional towards, while having it match with the color and shape of the flower. Something circular, round, and has flight. Wings. So I decided maybe something relating with birds, perhaps a group of people who are able to enlarge and reduce object sizes, making them able to carry it up and down the mountain easier. But also they would use this magic to ride on trained birds, perhaps snowy owls for their particular round shape. So I started sketching out some ideas. Do not laugh at my sketches. In the end, I just didn't like the shape. Owl wings aren't really round despite having the round body, and then it hits me. Why not build upon the grafting idea of the last part? We established that it may seem obvious to graft a beetle's body part to acquire its magnitude of strength. But different sizes and objects completely changes the way the runes are placed and traced, almost making it like learning a completely new ability. Abnormally small or large animals being much more challenging. Grafting butterfly wings, a shape matching with the roundness of the flower, yet also provides flight. Grafting something so small like this would normally be near impossible for their distant cousins, the Ceridian people, but their time in isolation and peace would allow them to develop that ability. As for the ability to reduce weight, they have engraved runes into their scapula, reducing their bone weight, but furthermore, this serves as another purpose, as their wings are also attached to this area. It is important to reduce weight here, because a butterfly can't really lift more weight than the weight of its own body. There is no specific number, but just the fact that butterflies seek cover during rain makes me think this way. The Weldenia people would carry not only clothing and weapon, but also hunted prey, making this ability crucial. They carry a leaf marked with the runes so they can engrave it on the creatures they hunt. Due to the nature of the runes being carved on their own back, unable to reach their own runes with their own hands means that they will only travel in groups of 2. An hourglass is also carried. Keeping time is important. When the spell ends, the wings shrink and so rips itself from most of their back. A bloody process, but grafting magic being an evolution of healing magic makes it not so dangerous, as part of the grafting runes can easily be traced again to heal. All of this so they can carefully remove and store the wings after use. Despite being able to easily gather more wings, they all treasure the ones that they do have. The specialized cuts in their clothing help out with this as well. Now for our final ability, which connects not only the practicality of living in snowy mountains, connects the meaning behind the word Candida, and the shape and color of the anther part of the flower. Glowing javelins. Why do mountaineers use bright colored clothing in snowy environments? It means you are far more likely to be spotted night and day if there is a problem and you need to be rescued. This concept is especially important for their javelins to not get lost in snow, javelins being their choice of weapon due to their flying. With gravity to assist, their javelins strike so much deeper. Engraved on the tip of the javelins are simple magic runes that allow them to glow, but alongside the javelin they carry a large wicker shield, an excellent choice because they aren't able to spare the extra weight with any sort of armor. White fur is sewn in on the outer side of the shield. Useful for camouflage, they can also hook their foot in and fly, the shield protecting them from any sort of ranged weapon fired from below. And thus this ends the Weldenia chapter, a group who came from the scattered remains of the grafting people, living their peaceful lives hunting and gathering, isolated from the cold of the world. Isolated as well is me in my Discord. I mean, it's just me in here. If anyone wants to join, I mean, we can talk about art, or if you have a cool world, or, you know, maybe there's a cool show you enjoy. Sedum Matrona. Tall and sturdy, it has this dark and deep red that almost bleeds into the color of the leaves. Zooming in on the flowers, you are introduced to a plethora of unique shapes. This flower is pretty. But what is it about? Starting with a name was very difficult. These are the amount of names they are called. I had no idea where to even begin. But parsing through the names is where things started to make sense. Sedum Matrona was the original name in the book, but the more precise name would be Sedum Matrona. Going back to the taxonomy pyramid, Sedum the genus, Telephium the species, and Matrona the color type within the species. However, this was all changed as their genus was reclassified to Hylotelephium, but the name isn't fully adopted. Many places and shops still call them Sedum. Honestly, even the reason why they were separated into a different genus could be an inspiration catalyst. like a royal family being split after the realization that one of their branches had a different ancestor. I mean, they kind of did that, analyzing the plant DNA and determining that the thing had different plant ancestors. But these words were too big for me, and I already had a lot to work with the names already. I just wanted to say how cool it is that you can take away so many interesting ideas or backstories from a plant that you would normally just look at in a garden. Anyways, finally, these are the common names. The most common being stone crop. Now, I'm going to use any of this to incorporate the name of the plant, so we'll just mark it off the list. Since there are so many, I'm going to run with the first idea that pops, while trying my best to incorporate as many names as I can to the story or design. Starting with Sedum, meaning house leek. This doesn't give me much of a start, except the image of a house leek. Matrona seems to have multiple meanings throughout the many languages. The vibe that I get is that it represents something around femininity and honor, so I'll try to keep that in mind. Now, onto Hylotelephium. Hylo meaning woodland, Telephium meaning far-off lover. I can see a person being called a far-off lover, but I don't know what a group of people who are called this would even begin to look like. Stonecrop, renowned for its ability to survive in a dry and rocky environment. There was the hook, an occupation for these guys for a job that never has existed in your world. A caver. One who explores caves, but is also a miner at the same time, who extracts materials from the earth. However, in order for me to justify this in a low magic setting, now that was the issue. You see, cavers or spelunkers are nice people. They don't mine and take, following the leave no trace ethical guideline. This was really important for safety reasons. Cave-ins, slippery surfaces, areas of dangerous gas, bacteria, or fungi. There are plenty of stories of cavers stuck in caves, squeezed between the rocks, and they slowly fade in and out. A cold and dark end. It's just not worth it, and I needed a way to make it worth it. And thus I am brought back to the grafted deermen. I established that there was almost no permanent magic. Intended effects only last for a limited time and must be traced again to recast. However, constant reuse of magical effects on an object or body part can leave permanent non-intended changes, as shown by the antlers that unnaturally jut out of the ribcage of the Cervidian people. So I introduce you to a remnant of time before the Heuchera Age, an unnatural expansive cave system settled far away from the center of the continent. Centuries of use by somebody or some people of unfathomable power have left their imprint of magic in these cave systems. But in the present, the Sedum Matrona people find their daily lives intertwined with studying this ground. From cave crawling tactics to understanding cave stability, these group of people seek these pinkish red crystals with a slight sweet taste. It seems to pulsate with its glow underground. Once exposed to the oxygen and colder atmosphere above ground, it transforms into this bronze-like substance that can be smelted and used for trading or tools. Your world has a similar crystal that does transform its colors. However, in this case, this is reminiscent of the fact that the Sedum Matrona flower turns a bronze color during the winter. Despite the inherent risk of cave mining, the practical use of these crystals, the use for trading, and the intrigue behind their physical change makes the risk worthwhile. But they must prepare heavily for the danger. Their biggest and only magical tool being the knowledge of hardening runes, temporarily making anything they inscribe extraordinarily hard. An ability befit of the name Stonecrop. It's simple, but how they weave this ability into their gear is where it's cool. Most profoundly in a giant leaf pickaxe that can be folded to crawl through cave squeezes and can be hardened to properly mine the material. Depending on how it's folded, it can also be used as a shovel. Besides the leaves, there's also a large crystal set on top of the pickaxe. They use the glowing property of the crystal for light purposes, but also a regular leaf pickaxe doesn't really have the weight of a normal pick. The added weight at the end allows for the swings to strike with the proper downward force. But beyond the pickaxe, the runes are also engraved on their elbow pads and knee pads. Very important when you're crawling in caves. The reason why they use leaves here is that stone crops are succulents. In your real world, succulent plants contain a gel-like substance within the leaves and stems. This gel is essentially a water storage tissue that allows succulents to survive periods of drought. In this world, they would use the slick gel to slide through narrow passages. In these tight squeezes, rocks jutting out would damage the leaves and release the gel. Special leaves are weaved into most of their clothing, from the cuff of the pants to the shoulders, with hardening runes inscribed underneath in case they don't want to release the gel. There's a lot of issues with leaves in clothing, like how fragile it is to work into clothing or how it decays, but the hardening ability is what makes it work. You see, the more precise effect of this ability is that it hardens the object against outside influence, so you would need multiple times the amount of force or heat to alter or damage the object. So used on leaves that would normally rot would slow down the decay because the heat isn't applied at the same amount anymore, kind of like a refrigerator. The hardening would also make it so it's easier to work into clothing as well. But beyond the magic being used for gear, they also engrave runes on cave walls. It may take hours to engrave just to simply delay cave-ins, but it is that assurance and vigilance ingrained in them that makes this job viable despite the danger. Their gear is almost fully practical. Crystals tied to the bottom of their shoes providing light, a grip on the floor, and the ability to kick and dislodge rocks in case they are in a bad squeeze. Their nets of crystals taking inspiration from the form and shape of the Sedum Matrona flower not only serve as a way to carry crystals, but the net holes also allow the crystal light to shine through. But there is a piece of gear that goes beyond just being practical, and that is their helmet, adorned with decorative engravings symbolizing the importance of their job. You see, the people of Sedum Matrona are a matriarchal group, taking inspiration from the word Matrona.
Matrona seems to have multiple meanings throughout the many languages. The vibe that I get is that it represents something around femininity and honor.
Yes, I know it means married woman, but hold on, look at this. Ancient Rome, women of high rank. Another one of rank or social respectability. In Celtic mythology, Dea Matrona, divine mother. I told you, that's what I meant when I said vibe. They are also married to the grind set. It also makes perfect sense. Women generally having a smaller frame make a difference in getting through the dangerous squeezes of this unique cave system. Over time, this advantage, coupled with the significance of this job for the community's livelihood and trade, gave them a lot of decision-making authority. But the significance also played a huge part in the culture, leading the group of people to become a matriarchal society. Within the culture, their grand status was also passed down in folktale, stories of legendary cavers crushed underneath the weight of the earth, entrapped in the silent darkness, but yet somehow making it back alive. They were nicknamed the Live Forever, similar to one of the common names of the Sedum Matrona in your world. Beyond the legendary spelunkers who only made up 5% of the population, they had traders. The Sedum Matrona are part of the very few magic societies that made contact and traded with each other. This gave them some prosperity, and they were referred to some as the witch's money bag, similar to the other common name for the plant. And so that closes off the Sedum Matrona chapter. Days deep in the dark underground, it's hot, humid, sounds of bats and water dripping. A strange cave. Our group of crystal miners, with their razor-sharp focus, chip away and explore, bringing back abundant treasure. Hey, thanks for watching my first video. I don't know if anyone would be interested in listening to a random guy yap about his art, but even if one person makes it to the end, it means a lot. I thought this would be a quick 10-minute video when I originally started and didn't expect to take months making this. By the way, check this out. Sedum Dragon's Blood. That is an insane name. Imagine if I rolled this. I thought it'd be cool to get some seeds from the plants in this video, but they ran out. And this one has a cool name. Anyways, I don't really plant anything, but making this video, I did like them a lot more. Even the seemingly boring ones always have something cool about them. Stumbling around into random rabbit holes while researching for this video was kinda cool. I think we all get into a certain habit of enjoying things we know we will like. The same genres of shows or subject matters. I think there's something cool about diving into something you have no idea about and exploring it.